The author and philosopher Albert Camus said, "In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. In order to serve men better, one has to hold them at a distance for a time. But where can one find the solitude necessary to vigor? The deep breath in which the mind collects itself, and courage gauges its strength." What does it mean to turn away from the world? Does it mean becoming a monk, solo traveling, living in a cave? The kind of people who do these things have an internal longing to escape. They don't fit into the 9 to 5. They can't get along with their peers, and they don't feel at home in their city. They don't know what they want, apart from one thing: they want to be free. But when you are free from responsibility, you are completely alone. Hardly anyone knows your name, and all the story that goes along with it. You become invisible. You are seen as an outsider. You don't get excited about what the world gets excited about. You aren't interested in the world and its temptations. Your own company and your philosophy are all that you require. But what if you don't want to completely break free from the world's chains? What about turning away from it on occasion? And instead of completely escaping the world, what about trying to understand it in order to serve men better? We can't all escape into the forest. How much fulfillment can be found from living in a hut in the woods if you aren't playing your part in making the world a better place? We need to take breaks from the world to understand it, so we can re-enter and better serve our fellow man. The Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi said, "We must achieve the greatest possible tranquility of mind, and this requires both the effort of doing and the art of letting go." We need a balance of doing and being in our lives. This is what Camus is trying to convey. In this video, I will explain why Camus was right, why taking time to be alone can help us better understand the world and find our ideal place in it to better serve others. What is the world? The world is current events and interpersonal relationships. It is, in a word, drama. The world is characterized by speed and noise, hustle and bustle. It is also defined by what it values. The world values external achievement, monetary wealth and fame as evidence of success, and undervalues peace and contentment. Where's the evidence for this? Well, look at those who are thrust into our faces as the pinnacle of worldly success. But are they content? Take a look at the people who are always on our social media feeds. Do they seem peaceful to you? And there are many cases of celebrities who would have probably traded their success for peace of mind. Jim Carrey is an example of a famous person who realized that worldly success was a hoax.
I believe that I had to become a famous, idea, get all the stuff that people dream about, and accomplish a bunch of things that look like success in order to give up my attachment to those things.
So what is worldly success? It is earning lots of money, living a stressful life, getting lucky, and never having free time. The world wants you to be doing things, to be useful. So what a radical thing it is to turn away from the world, to spend time alone and to be idle. Eckhart Tolle said, "Don't let a mad world tell you that success is anything other than a successful present moment." This goes completely counter to the world's definition of success. The world discounts the present moment in favor of a better future one. But is this a sane way to live? Camus suggests we retreat from the world on occasion so we don't lose the perspective that can be acquired through being alone. What is this perspective? That the world is mad, and what it values has no bearing on human contentment and happiness. For most people, their only reality is the world. But what being alone shows you is that there is another dimension to life: consciousness. Meditation is the art of being serene and alert in the present moment, instead of constantly struggling to change or to become. The world runs counter to meditation. It is constantly in doing mode. Leave your house and go into the world. Every human you see is doing something. Take a walk down a train carriage. How many people do you see just looking out the window? Most people are on their phones. When I'm walking in public and I see someone sitting on a bench looking out at the view, it draws my attention. There is someone who is just being. They emanate stillness and peace. But what looks like something so effortless, sitting on a bench, is to many people akin to torture. Sitting on a bench? I've got so many things to do or think about. I don't have time to sit on a bench. That is what the mind says when we attempt to sit on a bench and be still. The world would be a radically different place if we all took 5 to 10 minutes out of our days sitting on a bench in stillness. Think about how much being that would bring into the world, stillness and peace, to counteract the doing, restlessness and unease, which is the default setting of our society. What we are doing doesn't matter to the mind. It just wants us to do something, and then do something else, and then do something else, ad infinitum. Only when the body gives in to sleep does the mind shut up. But is that the way we want to live? Do we want this on our gravestone? He did many things, but he could never quietly sit on a bench for 5 minutes. He was never at peace with himself. He was lost in the world. The best analogy for our mind is a cluttered room. There is no space for stillness. The mind craves stuff, thoughts, sensations, and experiences, anything that distracts one from the present moment. As I'm writing this script, I feel a slight pull to leave Google Docs and check my WhatsApp messages. That acknowledgement of the mind's force, and choosing whether to follow the thought or to drop it, that is meditation. It's that boredom with the familiar, the desperate need to move on to another activity, that results in a constant background static of unease. Here's a test. Try sitting and doing nothing for 5 minutes. Notice a feeling of restlessness creeping in, a sense of guilt for not doing something. But if you give in and do that thing, the mind second guesses what you are doing and thinks of the next thing to do, the more important thing. Notice that the mind wants to torment you. Whatever you are doing and wherever you are, your mind isn't 100% satisfied. There is often a faint gravitational pull to do something else or be somewhere else. Meditation is awareness of this pull. All of this is the product of being identified with the world, believing unconsciously that life is nothing but doing. Camus asks where one can find the deep breath in which the mind collects itself. How can we collect ourselves if we are constantly rushing from place to place, one activity to the next? You won't be able to find a deep breath in the world. You find it in stillness. Only in stillness can you see the mind's dysfunction and stop identifying with it and learn to go beyond it. Once you realize the mind's dysfunction in yourself, you start seeing it in others. Once you have retreated from the world, meditated on the workings of the ego, and then re-entered the world, you realize that nothing another person does to you is personal. Everybody suffers from the same disease, the ego. If someone insults you, you know the reason why. They aren't in touch with their true self, stillness. They haven't spent time alone, doing nothing. What is the ego? It is like a bucket with a small hole at the bottom. Everything you do is an attempt to fill up the bucket, but the bucket is never full due to the small hole. Meditation is an attempt to fill up the hole by saying, internally, this moment is enough. There is nothing I need from the world to make this moment any better than it is. This doesn't mean you stop striving for new experiences. You simply stop believing those new experiences will complete you, will fill up a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Once you step back from the world, even briefly, you start to see how seriously you took its forms. Social roles, achievements, problems, and you realize that seriousness was an illusion. Once you gain this perspective, you see that the world isn't life, which implies it needs to be taken seriously, but is more like a manifestation of life. Behind the forms of the world is life. If life was the world, we wouldn't be able to be aware of it. We would be it. The world is a manifestation of thought, but we can witness the thoughts that make up the world. There can be space around it, a gap between thoughts. That is life. Through taking breaks from the world, finding time for being rather than doing, one can understand the ego's dysfunction and start to break out of it. The world is a product of the ego in its extreme manifestation. To understand the world, one needs to understand their own mind. So one needs to take a step back from the world. Sitting and doing nothing goes against the world's values, which is precisely why meditation is so important. Here is an example of what the world values. Look at Netflix. It is one of the world's most successful businesses. Netflix CEO, Reed Hastings, said that there are only certain amount of hours which humans can tend to activities, and Netflix's goal is to occupy those moments and deliver the utmost joy to the consumer during that opportunity. He said, "You get a show or a movie you're really dying to watch, and you end up staying up late at night, so we actually compete with sleep." Netflix is successful because people are afraid of doing nothing in their spare moments. Instead of stillness, people want distraction. The ego wants a constant state of doing, and big companies such as Netflix, which in the world's eyes is the definition of success, don't want us to spend time being. Amazon is similar. It is also successful as it depends on people's dissatisfaction. It feeds off people's sense of lack. If I buy this product, I will feel good, and I will feel good tomorrow as its next day delivery. The world doesn't want us to feel good now. It wants us to believe we'll feel good tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and it isn't tomorrow. It's the now. So we look again for an illusory tomorrow that never comes, to complete our sense of lack. The only way to cultivate a sense of satisfaction is by utilizing our inner resources, and that means we need to take a retreat from the world. There is one activity, one form of doing, that challenges the mind's default state of distraction and unease. It's called reading a book. In comparison to other storytelling mediums, such as films, TV shows, and video games, the book requires solitude. You can't read the same book with someone else, unless you do a reading club, but even then you still have to read alone. You create the world, the characters, and the sensory experience in your mind. You need to step out of the world and into your book. Something that requires solitude, peace, and quiet is what humanity desperately needs. What do we usually do when we are alone? These days, we get out our phone and allow our attention to be stolen by social media algorithms. The author Johann Hari said, "When you read a book, you are engaging in a sustained act of attention." The key word is sustained. Unlike social media, where attention is fragmented, a book requires sustained attention on the story or argument for understanding. You can't be multitasking. Every fiber of your being needs to surrender to reading for reading to be effective. Why is this good for us? Because we are taking control of our attention and making better use of our time alone. Instead of spending an hour mindlessly scrolling, where we don't remember much of what we consumed, we could spend an hour reading something enriching and enlightening. The difference can be understood through noticing how you are feeling after the hour. When you spend an hour on social media, or just using technology mindlessly, you feel restless and agitated. If I were to have wasted my time on my laptop, the number of tabs open usually correlates with my mental state. The more pieces of information on my screen, the more stressed and anxious I am. This is because my mind is aware of other things I could be paying attention to. and isn't content with what I'm paying attention to right now. However, after reading, I usually feel calmer and more attentive. There is only one tab open, the page I'm currently reading. My breathing slows down, and there is a feeling of spaciousness. Reading is a kind of meditation, similar to mantra meditation. Instead of keeping in your mind a phrase and repeating it silently to cultivate peace and stillness, in a book, the story is your mantra, the words on the page. There is no room for other thoughts when you are reading. It requires your complete attention. Your hands and mind are engaged. You can't hold a film or TV show like you must hold a book, which means it's easier to be on your phone and be distracted. Multitasking is the antithesis of peace. In order to be peaceful when we are doing something, we need to have one object for our attention. Reading is a great way to cultivate this peace. The more we read, the less inclined we will be to multitask when it comes to other activities. For the mind to collect itself, as Camus explains, one needs to focus on doing one thing. This is similar to the Zen proverb, chop wood, carry water. While writing the script for this video, I got distracted trying to turn off a beeping sound on my watch. Leaving the Google Docs page, going on to ChatGPT to ask what to do, solving the problem, and then coming back, has created a mild feeling of restlessness. Jumping from one point of focus to another is important in a survival situation. Having the ability to drop what we are doing and react to things is an essential part of any animal's survival. But why, when we are using technology, do we allow ourselves to get swept into this mode? We don't choose to. Something about the ease at which technology allows us to multitask means we end up doing multiple things at once. The book, an analog activity in a world of digital distraction, presents one activity: reading. That's why it's such a special medium. As Hari said, to read a book is to resist the cultural current of distraction. It is to swim against the tide. Picking up a book is a step towards liberating yourself from the ego. Eckhart Tolle said, "Your life has an inner purpose and an outer purpose. Inner purpose concerns being and is primary. Outer purpose concerns doing and is secondary." Tolle is saying that, like Camus, to better serve the world, we need to turn away from the world and cultivate our inner purpose. But what is our inner purpose? I would suggest one's inner purpose is counter to the world's purpose, which has no interest in peaceful living. What is the opposite of noise and distraction, the world's default mode? Stillness and being. How do we find stillness and being? By retreating from the world. And how do we bring that stillness and being into the world? That is our outer purpose. Revolutionizing the doing mode of consciousness. Instead of being completely absorbed in the doing, one can bring in a dimension of being. How can what I do bring more stillness into the world? The only way this can happen is for what you do to be infused with being. This adds a new quality to the doing. Whatever you do is not restless and uneasy, but calm and productive. You give the doing your full care and attention. This means what you are doing is meaningful and intrinsically rewarding. For me, an activity I would like to grow at is writing. Writing for Substack and these video essays requires presence and prolonged attention. If my mind is busy, I can't write. I have to wait patiently for the right words to come out. I must surrender to the writing process. This requires stillness. I am hoping that what I write about will serve the world in some way, help people live more peaceful lives. But if someone can listen to my words and feel calmer without even paying attention to what the words are saying, that's because the beingness in which I wrote the words and record my voice is being registered by the listener. This doesn't have to only apply to writing and making videos. If you can be peaceful with what you bring into the world will become more peaceful. If you are peaceful in what you do, the world becomes more peaceful. You feel that peace, and your peace grows. I have experienced this when I interact with strangers. If someone is kind and peaceful in an interaction, in a shop or a cafe, I feel calmer and more at ease. I've come to realize that it's not actions by themselves that change the world, but the peace in which those actions happen. Camus wrote, "In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. In order to serve men better, one has to hold them at a distance for a time. But where can one find the solitude necessary to vigor, the deep breath in which the mind collects itself, and courage gauges its strength? Solitude is the answer. Taking breaks from the world is essential so one can look at things with clarity. This is one of the biggest benefits of being alone, understanding the ego and transcending it. Meditation is being aware of the ocean of consciousness that all things came out of. How can one attempt to understand the world without knowing where the world came from? Thoughts, which create the world, come from consciousness. We must tap into that consciousness to create higher quality thoughts so we can build a better world. Watch how stillness guides you to the right action. What are you going to do now? See what thoughts come out of stillness. That is true productivity. Paying attention to the source of thoughts, the ocean of consciousness, leads to creativity, originality, and insight. Paying attention only to thoughts, the waves in the ocean, means you are stuck with the same tired, repetitive thoughts. Nothing new can emerge, leading to the same behaviors which keep you restless and miserable. If you want something new to come into your life, spend time alone and get in touch with stillness. And then, serve your fellow man. Thanks for watching.